What's going on, everyone? I know y'all have been waiting a long time for this, but the rebrand is finally here. Welcome in to Crystal Ball College Football. We're going to be talking about game breakdowns, recaps, previews of the following weeks. We're going to talk football all season long and in the off season, so stay tuned and enjoy. Welcome into Crystal Ball College Football. I'm your host, Grayson. For today, we're talking about the winners of week one. Tomorrow, we're going to talk about the losers from week one, but today, it's the bright spot. It's the happy spot. It's the moment where we all sit back and go, man, they looked good, or this was good for the sport, or this was just a great storyline that emerged. So I have 4 of them this week, but the first one is us, the fans, the college football fans. I mean, you get college football playoff expansion news. That's great for the sport. That's great for so many different teams, for so many brands. It's going to allow, group of 5 teams to be in the playoff every year. It's going to allow Big 12, Pac-12 to be in the playoff every year, ACC as well. I just think it gives more hope to a lot of different schools, and I think that's a big thing and really great for the sport. So for the fans in general, I think that's awesome. The other part of the fans that I think is really important to talk about is the games. The backyard brawl, Penn State versus Purdue, UTSA versus Houston, North Carolina, Appalachian State. I mean, what a shootout. What a crazy game. NC State, East Carolina almost had a massive upset in week one. LSU, Florida State, Florida, Utah, Arkansas, Cincinnati, and there were others, but those are just a few that really made that week one really, really special. And I think for any college football fan that got to watch a lot of games on Saturday, you probably came away really happy with the slate of games you're able to see. Even though there were some blowouts and some games that weren't competitive, there were still some awesome games and awesome storylines within those games that I found extremely intriguing. Okay, so let's move on to a little more specific teams and coaches and things like that. So the second winner this week is Jim Knowles. And it's really Jim Knowles, Ohio State in general, because he's the new defense coordinator there, had a great game plan against Notre Dame. They played really well, only gave up 253 total yards. And if you watch that game, it felt like even less than that. It felt like Notre Dame was really, really struggling at every turn to make plays happen. And the thing of it is that later on in the year, you're going to see this Notre Dame team run on people really consistently. They have a very good offensive line, and that simply did not happen against Ohio State on the weekend, and that's a big credit to Jim Knowles. So he left from Oklahoma State, where he brought together a top 8 defense in the country there at Oklahoma State. They were terrific, and he goes to Ohio State, and you can already tell there's a physicality that is unique for this Ohio State football program on the defensive side of the ball. And I'm just going to straight up say it. He raises their ceiling to another level. And I'm not going to sit here and say that offenses can't win a national championship, because we've seen that in the past. We've seen great offenses win national championships, but a lot of times those great offenses are linked with a defense that just gets underrated because the offense is so good. And what I mean by that is LSU, for instance, the year they won the national championship. The offense is all anyone talks about, but you forget Dave Aranda was the defense coordinator there, and that defense had a ton of NFL players, and they were really, really good. The problem is the offense was scoring so fast that the numbers looked a little inflated on the defensive side, but I can promise you this. If LSU wanted to slow the game down and run the football and play all about the defense, they still would have probably won the national championship that year. That's just the fact of the matter. And I think at Ohio State, it's one of those things where the defense just simply over the past couple years has not been good enough to keep them in those grinded out games and keep them in games where maybe the scoring isn't as high or maybe they can't run the ball as efficiently. They weren't able to keep them in those games, and it led to some upset losses that they shouldn't have had. And so now I think he raises that ceiling. I think the offense is going to be just fine, by the way. They're still going to put 50 up on people very consistently. But on the defensive side, when it comes to winning a Big Ten championship and then going to the college football playoff and actually winning the playoff, Jim Knowles takes this team to a whole nother level. So I was really impressed with him in his first game as the defense coordinator. It showed big strides for the Buckeyes. Next up on my list of winners is kind of twofold. It's Billy Napier and Anthony Richardson at Florida. So for Billy Napier in his debut as the head coach at Florida to beat a top 10 Utah team, first of all, that's tremendous. That is a big, big blessing that Florida got. And it's also really cool for Billy Napier to be like, hey, week one, went in, beat a top 10 team in the country at home, got the fan base rallied, and I think everyone in Florida is believing now. And not just believing in the team in the future, but believing on this year's team, believing that they can actually make a run and possibly win the SEC East this year, or at least compete. You know, if Florida fans watch Georgia, they probably don't think they'll win the East, but I think compete is probably a great word, and maybe even get to 9 or 10 wins on the season. It's becoming more realistic after beating Utah over the weekend. I think Anthony Richardson is the biggest part of that, obviously. He was terrific, had his Heisman moment in week one, which is really impressive, but now he has to build on that. Can he do that week in and week out? Can he continue to carry an offense that's really going to rely on the run game? And we'll see if he can. But what I will say is the defense was good enough to keep them in the game. The run game was absolutely terrific. They mauled Utah up front, which was really impressive to see. So now it all comes down to, in the games where the run game gets taken away, are his receivers going to get open consistently enough? Is he going to make enough throws for them to win all of those games? That I don't know. But what I do know is Florida looks like they're in a great spot right now. Anthony Richardson is a tremendous athlete and a guy that they're going to build this school around and build this college football team around. And Billy Napier, I think, was absolutely the right guy for the job there for the Florida Gators. Finally, and again, also twofold, because I just loved watching this game for a variety of reasons, but it's Arkansas and Cincinnati for different reasons. So Arkansas, they looked great in the first half. They looked like a team that I expected, the team that I felt like could be the second best team in the SEC West, a team that could go 10-2 on the year. And then in the second half, they had some injuries in the secondary, and their young guys gave up some explosive plays. So I'm not going to read too much into that. I do feel like if they are healthy in the secondary, they'll look more like the team in the first half. I love what Kendall Briles did offensively, calling plays for KJ Jefferson in the run game and in the pass game. They were very balanced. They dominated up front. And I just felt like this physicality that I thought Sam Pittman would bring to the table there and kind of help them grow, I felt like he brought that. And I felt like for Arkansas, it's all about culture for them. And their physicality up front continues to show week in, week out from last year to this year. And that's a great thing. That bodes really, really well when you play in a conference like the SEC. But then I also like Kendall Briles' approach of spreading the ball out and being able to make some explosive plays in the pass game. I think that's going to be really, really important as well. Now on the Cincy side, I think this was huge for them. I mean, for them to battle back on the road in that environment in Fayetteville, so impressive. Luke Fickell never phased. This was a guy, when I was watching that game, I just sat there and went, man, this guy, he can really, really coach. And I felt this way for a while. I really have. I felt like he was a great coach, but to see him consistently do this and consistently compete against some of the best teams in the country, that's important. And for Cincy, going on the road against an SEC team that I feel like is probably one of the 15 best teams in the country and playing the way that they did, that was a statement, even in a loss. So I think Cincinnati is still going to be a 10-win team. I think they might win the American again. There's probably a pretty good chance of that. And I came away so impressed with what Cincinnati has built and what Luke Fickell has done for that program. Really, really impressive as they continue to trend in a great direction prior to entering the Big 12 next year. So those are my winners this week. Quite a few, but I think overall just a great week of college football, and great for the fans and great for the schools and great for the brands, because college football playoff expansion is here and everyone has to be extremely, extremely excited for the future now of college football. Thanks for joining this week. This has been Crystal Ball College Football with Grayson Greenhaver.